Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think. Welcome to episode number 64 of the Focus and Chill podcast. We're thrilled to be joined by Damien Diecke today. Damien is the founder of the School of Attraction and The Dangerous Man. He's the author of the award-winning book, Sincere Seduction. He's been a coach and professional speaker in over 25 countries. He was diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 10 and struggled until he started his company at the age of 25, which he's still running today, 15 years on. Damien has developed unique working styles to enable him to be productive. Many of his clients have ADD, and he's here today to share these working styles and how his work can help those with ADHD and ADD. Welcome to the show, Damien.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, but it's going to be a really interesting discussion. Let's kick it off with the diagnosis journey for you. You were diagnosed at the age of 10. What was that like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I never saw myself as being divergent. It was not a word back then, but different. And in any way, I guess I felt frustrated and misunderstood. That's what I felt. I think that's a core feeling I've had all my life, is feeling misunderstood by people. I mean, my mom noticed that I was constantly disruptive during class, and the teachers would have a very similar type of feedback. She got me to see a psychiatrist who diagnosed me with ADHD. I wasn't immediately put on medication or anything like that. At that point, we were still a little bit more apprehensive with medication for it. But it enabled my teachers, I suppose the diagnosis gave my teachers more patience with me. And I think that's the thing that changed. Once I had a diagnosis, people treated me differently, not in a bad way, but the people who were making me feel misunderstood were a little bit more patient with me, just a little bit.
And what happened from there, from primary school? It only gets tougher in high school and beyond?
Well, it's interesting. When I was in primary school, I had no friends. I'd always have one kind of friend most of the time, but a not popular kid, not because I was a nerd, because I was a dork, but it caused a lot of pain. Like I wasn't, hiding. I wasn't introverted. I wanted to interact with people, but I would always be rejected by my peers. I was a source of a lot of pain. For some reason, as I got into high school, I started to have friends. And while I still had a lot of the, I guess, developmental difficulties, paying attention in class, being focused, all this kind of stuff, having friends made a world of difference as far as my emotional health was concerned. I really struggled in high school a lot when it came to things like homework. I still felt traumatized. I can still remember walking to school every day, wondering what trouble I was going to get into that day because of what wasn't done. I don't know why I struggled so much. I could not get myself to do the homework. I wasn't trying to be ignorant. I wasn't trying to be rude to the teachers. I wasn't trying to be, anything bad. I just couldn't get myself, or I'd forget. But most of the time it was just the motivation. I just couldn't. And so because I knew my motivation was so bad, I'd just lie to my parents about what homework I had to do,
Was part of the schoolwork wasn't really interesting to you?
Yeah, that was definitely a part of it. It's interesting. When I was a little kid, I was a little pre-high school, pre-primary school, I was addicted to learning. I was well ahead of all my peers. before I started primary school. Because the initial diagnosis, the initial thing that happened to me in primary school is teacher said, we think we need to hold Damien back a year. And my mum said, well, can you at least get him tested first? And they got me tested and they said, oh, we should move him forwards a year. So they did that instead. But the love for learning was already knocked out of me. It's hard. As an adult, I love learning again. I'm addicted to it, constantly learning. I'm reading a book a week. My procrastination as a guy with ADHD is like learning, consuming information about different topics. But it got knocked out of me in high school. And so it wasn't even necessarily so much that the topics couldn't be interesting, because some of those topics are interesting to me today. I just hated the concept of school. That was it. I just hated it. That forced learning, I had a real block to.
Yeah, understandable. How about from there, after high school, what happened next?
So high school, I was lucky in a sense, lucky/unlucky, but I went to a very competitive high school where there's a lot of pressure to work hard and perform. And the later years, I was put on Ritalin medication for my ADHD. A lot of study hours, a lot of work was put in. And then I just got through high school. It was very difficult. And at university, you don't have your mum pushing you. You're not in with the one class with the same group of kids where, if you don't perform well enough, their mums are going to be like, I don't know if you should hang out with Damien. He's not performing well enough.
Oh.
I mean, a lot of the pressure that had been pushing me to do something wasn't there. And yeah, I dropped out of university. I got through 2 years and everything started failing. I just wasn't getting the work done. It was as simple as that. It was the final push against being forcibly educated, even though university is choice. Is that, you know what I mean? Here's the curriculum and this is how you have to do it. Yeah, I shut down at that point and I dropped out. Yeah. And I had to find my own way. I had to sort of work my own way around trying to make something of myself.
And you have made something of yourself. So what happened
Arguably.
from the end of 2 years of university? What happened after that?
So the excuse for dropping out of university completely was my dad hurt his neck at work. And so I helped him out. He had a construction business. And so I helped him for a year. But, I never intended to go back to university. And then it was quite a bit of an aimless space, right? I don't know what I want to do with myself. I was quite driven. I wanted to make something of myself. I wasn't lacking in drive. I wasn't sort of wanting to be lazy or anything like that. I had this problem where I would start these great business ideas, these little things where I don't know whether it was DJing or buying things on eBay and reselling them, or perfectly valid things that could make a profit. But then just as I started to have any kind of success at all, I'd stop for no logical reason. I just would stop. And that would happen.
You figured it out
over
already.
and over again.
The problem was solved and it became less interesting.
I think part of it, I mean, I'm like that with games too. I don't like playing games like we do a lot of board games nights and like things like that, party games, but any games that you can figure out and become repetitive, I have no interest in. I lose interest quickly. But anyway, to go on, yeah, that could be a part of it. But to go on with the original question, I struggle with that a lot. And then I started to get involved heavily with my own self-development. I had some hormone dysregulation problems as well. So my body doesn't break down stress hormones very well. I didn't learn that until I was late in my 30s, but I still had the symptoms when I was young. And so I had panic attacks. I had that to contend with quite severely in my late teens, early 20s. So it was a very difficult period for me in that sense of trying to find what I wanted to do. And so I got very involved in my own self-development. Part of that was men's work, which is men's self-development, which is, okay, what's your relationship to your masculinity? How do you feel about that? How do you relate to women? And it's a very good kind of holistic, slightly spiritual approach to self-development that helped me a lot as far as just my self-awareness was concerned. And as I was doing that, I noticed a lot of guys were getting involved in sort of trying to pick up girls and do the whole pickup artist thing. This is the whole thing that was big in the early 2000s. And what was interesting was that what I was being taught in my own self-development, the men's work, was very at odds with what was being taught to guys to pick up girls, because what was being taught to guys was kind of manipulation, deceit, playing games. And what was being taught with the men's work is your self-esteem and your integrity are linked. You can't have one without the other. So, and I saw that. I saw guys get involved in this thing with very fragile self-esteems that depended on women responding well to them, which is very unhealthy, rather than an internally generated sense of self. And anyway, I got involved in all that. And I got a really big passion for helping guys from the men's work perspective. And I was doing it sort of for free in the beginning. I was just going out with guys and just getting them to talk to girls without the games, without anything, just overcoming that fear of just getting in and talking and being you. And I started to do that just for free. I did it as a hobby. And at a certain point, I realized I needed to turn that hobby into something more. And yeah, it was the first time in my life I'd ever seen something through completely. was when I started to get that business going. I never, ever before had I seen anything through. I expected it to be the same, but it was different.
What do you think was different about it?
All right. I think piece of what made it different was that I got praise, and a lot of it, for what I was doing. I think in that early time, I was the guy who no one liked, no one wanted to be around. Hey, if I can teach you to meet women, everyone wants to be around you. And I think it really helped. It really spoke to my insecurity at that point. It's not the best answer. It's not the healthiest answer, but it's a piece of the answer. It's not the only piece though, but if I'm being honest and very real, I think that was a part of what helped a lot, was I had so much feedback in that way. The other thing too is this piece of advice that was given to me. I had a very good friend before I started the business, and he was 35. He retired 5 years before that. He wasn't a flashy entrepreneur. He was just he was definitely on the spectrum himself, very on the autism spectrum, that is. He definitely was very like studious and knew his stuff and organized, and he had a very precise way of living his life, but enabled him to retire early and do quite well for himself. And the advice he gave me, which was, I never forget, he said, if you're trying to get something moving and started, just commit to 5 minutes a day. So when you come home from work, you don't have to do a lot of work. Do 5 minutes, set a timer. When that 5 minutes is up, you're allowed to stop. And what was interesting is that, and okay, he knew that would happen, but sometimes I didn't want to stop. Because then I had a bit of meat in my mouth and something that I wanted to do, a task that like, no, I have to finish this task, like the hyper focus that you can get to. That started to kick in, not over time, but sometimes. And doing that really helped, because knowing I only had to do 5 minutes meant I would get started. And that was really helpful for me, at least. That helped a ton, because I did it enough, and then it became a routine. And with any project, at a certain point, it stops being a project you have to force yourself to do, and it becomes a habit. And once it was a habit, I didn't have to push myself anymore. Like, it's quite hard to stop work, to stop the act of starting work. But I notice, a lot of people who, obviously it's probably not a surprise, a lot of business people I'm around, or aspiring business people, are also, well, neurodivergent one way or another. Because, we get along better, we understand each other better. And I see a similar problem that they struggle with, is they have a great idea, they've got the knowledge, they've got the talent, they've got the IQ to handle it, but they struggle to keep up with the motivation, with the momentum. And that's been advice I've given to a lot of friends, is just only commit to 5 minutes a day, even if you know you need to do more. Sometimes it's all it takes. And if, you'll end up doing more days than not.
Yeah. And it's much easier to start it again the following day if you've made progress on it the day before.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you think there's something also about the type of the business? I mean, compared to selling stuff on eBay, where it's maybe less personal and you're not really interacting with fellow humans, whereas you're probably in a lot more contact, as well as getting the praise. I don't think you'd get much praise on eBay apart from A+++ seller.
Yeah, I mean, that helped. That certainly helped. It's funny though, because as time has gone on, I'd rather work with fewer people than more. I find myself rather being behind the scenes, honestly. I enjoy that more. I think a big thing, honestly, I think part of the nail on the head was what you said before, which is like, it's a puzzle. Like, business for me, it's a bit like a video game, and you have to learn to solve a problem, and it can become a little bit addictive when you start to look at it in that way. You have all these ways you could try to pass the level, so to speak. And I think, stereotypically anyone with ADD or ADHD specifically generally doesn't struggle to concentrate on video games. So it is possible, to focus in certain ways for certain reasons. And so I think to some degree, to a large degree, I've latched onto that very strongly, actually, because I get obsessed now. When there's a problem to be solved, I'm like, here are all the ways I could solve it. And I start chunking through it to pass the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Was that part of the self-development journey as well? The leveling up philosophy? Yeah,
it really was. I learned I had to take pieces of a lot of different people, like as you go through and you listen to Samantha Robbins, for example, and you go, well, actually, this really worked and this didn't at all, but this was great. And, you end up having to piece. That's what I did. I've had to cobble together my own system. It's no one person was like absolutely pivotal. I just had to piece everything together because I was pretty obsessed with making something of myself. That was, I guess, my schooling and everything else kind of, I hated the idea. I was told as a kid when I was diagnosed early, there's going to be limitations. And that, I don't know why, it ticked me off a lot.
I'll show them.
Yeah, I didn't like that. And so I had this kind of chip on my shoulder of, no, I'll find a way to make this work for me. And so I had that going for me, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, awesome. I like what you were talking about before as well, in terms of feeling that the pickup artist approaches were out of your integrity, that you found a way that had results, but also aligned with your own values.
Correct.
Might be part of choosing the mentors and the
Yeah.
influences. So the final question in this section is, we've probably touched on it a bit already, but what are the main strengths that you see from your brain that might be different compared to neurotypical people?
I'd say my hyperfocus is very useful. When I learned to really harness it, it became really useful. So with work, there are certain tasks I cannot hyperfocus on. There are certain things within I can't. I don't know why. Writing, I can never hyperfocus on writing. Writing sales emails, writing copy for websites is torture. It's a torture I can't explain. I can do it, but I don't know why. Maybe other neurodivergents can understand, but I hate it. I can never sink into it. Designing a website, building the website, I could spend hours. I could stay up all night if I needed to. And so what I've learned to do, of course, is I've learned to as much as possible, outsource the stuff I can't hyperfocus and lean into the stuff that I can. So when I build a business, I try to build it around the strengths that I've got, which I guess anyone should do, but I found that really useful for me. But it's also interesting because one of the problems I had, I mean, again, ADHD, one of the typical things is impulse control, right? So I love toys. And so buying toys, phones, headphones, IEMs, mobile, drones, whatever, electronic toy, impulse control was bad. But again, I learned to use it in my favor because I would obsess over these things for a while. I like to learn a new technology, obsess over it, and then buy into it. But I learned to make it profitable. So what I do is I'd learn about a hobby. I'd get really obsessed with it. Now I just buy into it in a way that I can sell what I just bought, usually at a profit. So I have this obsession with toys and hobbies, but I just buy and sell as I burn through them. So I don't lose money. I use some of my savings that I'm saving up for another house, or I use them on my hobbies and I just sell them. Like I resale and I usually turn a profit. And so I get to engage in some of that and it doesn't hurt me as much as it used to when I was younger.
Damien, could you tell us a bit more about the work projects that you're concentrating on at the moment?
Yeah, I have two main things that I work on, which is School of Attraction, which is the dating coaching for guys. The other thing that I have is I run retreats for men. So men's work retreats, which have nothing to do with women. It's more our sense of who we are as men and dealing with some of our inner demons and the stuff that I believe, it's a different topic, but I believe there's a bit of a crisis of masculinity and femininity, how we identify and how we communicate that identity and how we express ourselves and what is and isn't okay. It's very complicated now. And so I run retreats around that, which I think is, I'd argue, more people need than the dating coaching, but people often go for the bright, shiny object first.
I imagine there's quite a lot of overlap between the people that come in for men's coaching or the people that come in for dating advice. Some people might come in for dating advice, but then realize that actually it's a deeper problem that needs to be fixed.
100%.
Not fixed, but like changed or
yeah.
Have you found that the people that come in for men's coaching first, were they asked for dating coaching after that? Or what have you found with the people that come in for men's coaching first?
It's usually the other way around though. So at first, it's very hard to market men's coaching. Some people do it successfully. The majority of people who do, it comes from a narcissistic vantage point of like, it's this weird way that it's done. You know what I mean? The spiritual people who take lots of selfies. It's that, which I don't think is very spiritual at all anyway. But but if you don't do that, it's quite hard to sell spirituality. It's not as because it's not, I wouldn't call it spirituality, but self-development is a hard sell because people say, well, I understand why I do the dating coaching. I can meet more girls. But then why would I do the self-development work? Why would I do the men's work? And you're like, well, you try to explain it, but it's not flashy or exciting. And so usually it's almost always the other way around. And when they do the men's work, there isn't usually as strong a need to work on to pick up the women, because often, yes, loneliness is a very real thing for a lot of men. But often what happens is women get sort of idealized as the solution to what's hurting me emotionally. You know, if I could just have more women in my life, I'd feel better as a man. And then they do the men's work and they're like, I feel really amazing right now. No women were involved in this process. And so that's what happens to some degree.
I remember my entry into the self-development world was a similar thing, like reading the game, and it didn't come from a healthy place. It was just like, oh, these guys can have open relationships, and wouldn't they look like so baller, like having all these women in their life and stuff. And yeah, I remember the idea of polyamory and stuff like that it wasn't coming from a good place. Like I'm still polyamorous these days, but now it's coming more from a place of, I just want to love everyone. So, and so it's not really from a place of like, oh, check out how many partners I have. You know what I mean?
The why is so important with all our actions, right? The why we do it defines everything.
Yeah, that's it.
We do have some women who listen to the podcast as well. So could you maybe speak to them that how are you setting up guys to be potentially less irritating and pesky?
I think what happens for a lot of us guys is we overcomplicate the dating process. You know, if for the women listening, if you could be somewhere, it doesn't matter if it's a house party or if it's at a hobby or if it's in a bar. But if a guy comes up and talks to you and he's not doing anything crazy, but what he's doing is he's able to make you laugh. You know, he's able to entertain you or / himself, and he's real, he's present, and he's comfortable, and he actually has an interest in getting to know you. For most women, they wish more guys were capable of doing that, you know, without trying to suck up or trying to like, you know, he's actually assessing whether he wants to be with you too. He's not just like, oh, you're amazing, let's date. He's actually trying to learn about you and whether he wants to date you as well from that healthy place. For most women, they wish more men would do that. Because for women, one of the difficulties a lot of women have is the men they're most likely to come across are the few guys who actually take action regularly. And by regularly, I mean all the time. And those are often the guys you want to avoid. So the regular guys who treat you well, the way you deserve to be treated, they're generally not approaching and saying hello. So I'm really just getting those men in front of you and giving them the social skills to not make a lot of the mistakes that would push you away.
Yeah, it makes sense. Cool. And when you're not working on your business, what else do you enjoy getting up to?
I love flying like first-person view drones, like acrobatic drones. It was one of those hobbies I assumed to burn through. Like I burned through a hobby in 3 months and get over it and sell. I got absolutely addicted to that. It's like flying is great. You know, I keep fit, I keep healthy, I go to gym. I need to. I mentioned I had a hormone dysregulation thing, but I have to exercise. I think it's probably also part of my ADHD. I just struggle in life if I don't. Nothing functions properly. I do a lot of reading. I don't drink alcohol, just avoid alcohol. I stopped drinking when I was 21. I'm 41 now, so a little while ago now. And yeah, look, outside of that, you know, I mean, I'm in a full-time relationship, so I spend a lot of time with my partner. I have a relatively chilled life. I enjoy experiencing new things. Like I like going out. I love cars. You know, so sometimes it could be, hiring, paying to go out in a V8 dirt buggy or these kind of experiences that you do for yourself that make life better. I like to do those things now and again. But yeah, I'm pretty relaxed. I don't like clubbing. I don't like going to bars. I'm relatively introverted. I don't spend a lot of time outside of the house or my close circle of friends.
I'm curious about with the School of Attraction and what you would advise to people who might be on the autism spectrum, for example, because I struggled with that. It seems like a dominant societal narrative that the way to meet people is to go out to clubs and bars where they're very sensually overloading situations. Do you talk about that at all?
It's interesting, I think, because a lot of my clients, not a majority, but I'd say a surprising large number, let's say 20% of my clients are on the spectrum. They know they're on the spectrum. They mentioned to me. And yes, bars and clubs are overwhelming. It's a difficult space, but again, it's a spectrum. And so some people struggle more or less with the crowds, the noise and everything else. But I think it's become worse than ever because now we also just generally were more isolated than ever before, which for someone who's already on the spectrum it can be nice because it means you don't have to be around as many people as often, but it's also bad because it allows you to be around not as many people as often. Back when we had church and we had social groups and with those things, I think that's part of the reasons why it's diagnosed so much more often because, as you know, it's a spectrum, but coping and learning to manage and integrate is a critical part of that process. And when you had those social interactions consistently, more people had less impact on their lives socially than it does now. And that applies not just to people on the autism spectrum, but also introverts as well. But to go back to your question, I think a large thing a lot of men need, especially guys on the spectrum, is to be parts of community. Because, the guys that I work with, I can't speak for everyone on the spectrum because it's not my specialty, but the men that I work with, they don't get to feel a part of something very easily. They often feel like outsiders, a little bit like I felt in primary school. They feel that their whole lives, and getting to be a part of groups that are common interest groups, whatever the hobby is that you like. Adults can be a lot more accepting of neurodivergence than children, but often we carry, people carry the scars from their childhood. But the difficulty is people on the spectrum can find it's a slower process to get into communities, to get into groups. That's the difficulty. And so finding hobbies that you want to do that enable you to be part of a community tends to be really critical. And I say that to my guys as well. And sure, some hobbies won't involve women. You can imagine how many women are in first person, like drone. Okay,
I was going to ask that.
Not many, right? But salsa dancing, which is another thing that I love, has a lot of women, but not everyone's going to like salsa dancing. But you have to try to think about what hobbies will also involve, have women around, because having women as friends, even before you start to date, is a critical part of the understanding women thing, and also not seeing women as magical unicorns. Because you know what I mean? It humanizes them, I think, having them as part of your social group. And that's a critical thing. So that's something that I say to a lot of the guys I work with who have ASD is, join groups, be part of it. It is uncomfortable in the beginning. That's why it's got to be a hobby that you otherwise could enjoy as well.
Yeah. And that you would keep going post finding a partner as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm keen to hear more about the exercise as well. And maybe that can be part of a group environment too. Do you join a running club or go to a gym or anything like that?
I've got to admit, so I go to a gym. I've always been an exercise loner. I think it's because I started exercising regularly before a lot of my peers. And so I learned to be a loner with exercise. Now I go with my girlfriend. But if we split up tomorrow, I would still be going alone. I've never been a social gym person or an exercise person. I think it would be healthy to be part of a group like that. But also I'm not, okay, this could be my own personal bias, but I'll just say it anyway, because it's how I feel. I'm not sure I'd get along with a lot of people at gym. And maybe that's completely unwarranted because I've never tried hard enough, but that's how it feels. It feels like these are the kids I didn't get along with at school. Am I going to get along with them now? I have that feeling a little bit, and maybe I'm not alone in that, but I feel that too.
Yeah, that's why I don't go to the gym, because
Right.
I get that sense.
Yeah.
A bunch of jocks.
Yeah, right. And so you have that feeling a little bit. No, I've never had anyone be mean to me at the gym or, tease me or anything like that. It's just, yeah.
What type of exercise do you typically do at the gym?
That's an interesting, I mean, I do weights, I guess, because I want to look like I'm in good shape. But actually weights do nothing for me as far as my psychological stuff. Weights do nothing for me. Cardio is the thing that makes all the difference for me. I've got to do a lot of cardio. Meditation helps me a lot too, by the by. But one thing on meditation, because I talk to people a lot about how much that helped me, also with my ADHD. But something that I think I've got to mention, only because it was huge for me, meditation is, I've only recently learned, there's actual research on this. Meditation is often not the advised form of awareness training that is advised for everyone. And often people on the spectrum fall into this. You're often better off doing things like yoga and other forms of awareness coaching, because if our brains we have a dopamine regulation problem, it can be more stressful, the act of meditating, than not. So that's an interesting one. Worth noting. I say that because I went to a 10-day meditation retreat where all you do for 10 days is meditate.
The Vipassana retreat.
Yeah. And everyone's telling me how brilliant it is. And I'm like, well, I meditate every day, so this must be great for 20 minutes. But I meditate every day for 20 minutes. This must be, I suffered. I didn't stop suffering. I never had epiphany. I just suffered. And by the end, I was done. I was spent. And so I think it's because of my ADD.
Yeah. I've heard similar things as well, that the moving meditation can help a lot. I find that personally that it's very unpleasant for me to do sitting meditation unless I've already gone for a run first and got the energy out.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more fruitful.
So I've migrated to Qigong, which is a moving, breathing. So that action, the stuff that you're doing, actually, it's much easier for me to be present that period of time.
That makes sense.
So Damien, during your work hours, what do you do to optimize your productivity?
I'm very unusual, I think, with my work processes. I have to be hyper-structured. I do not function. I cannot function. I cannot get work done. That's a better way to put it. I can function, but I cannot get work done if I'm not hyper-structured. If my day isn't laid out the same way, if I wake up today and I say, all right, today, I'm going to sleep in, I'm going to start at 10 o'clock instead of 8. Everything falls apart. Like everything. I need structure. If everything's the same, it enables me to be a lot more productive. And so on a Sunday, for example, I'll plan out most of my week to the half hour. what's going to happen with work, tasks that need to be done. Also, it helps me. I have to set how long the task has to take. And sometimes a task just has to take longer and you rearrange after that point. But I have to prepare it beforehand. And when I have that laid in front of me, it's just me working through tasks to get something done. And I'm bad. I know I'm very bad with that. Like anytime I try to work with other people, it's frustrating for them because I've got to stay focused. And it's the only way that I know how to stay focused with that. So that is a big one. That's definitely a big way in which I'm different to most people. And I don't function any other way. I know that I'm easily distracted by people or events. So if people want to come and ask me questions, if all that kind of thing, it really throws me off. I can often talk about the act of hyperfocus being great, but it's terrible because if I need to attend to something else, if I'm really focused on a task and let's say I've got a podcast that isn't in the morning that I've got to do, it's a special type of pain to have to switch away from what I'm doing. Like it hurts.
Sorry for subjecting you to that pain.
Well, this was in the morning for me. I did one first thing in the morning and then I ate breakfast and walked my dog and then did this. So that didn't happen to me, right? I try to do my podcast in the morning when I can for that reason. And the other thing, I suppose, which was interesting for me is that I have to work in quite large blocks. People often talk about breaking up your people only have a limited attention span and we have to break it up like Pomodoro and stuff like that. That hurt me. I can't do that. I rely on my ability to focus when I get obsessed. I guess I rely on my session to work. If I don't have that, I can't work. And so those things hurt me. The only time when I definitely need to take a break is creativity. If I can't think of what to do next or how to solve a problem, it hurts me, but it helps me. Like as in psychologically, I just don't want to. I want to stay focused. I need to step away and go for a walk and take a break and step back. Yeah, it's an interesting experience. I get a special type of stress that is unique to those situations when I can't solve a problem and I start to obsess and can't find a solution. Like physiologically, like my blood pressure's high, my heart rate's high, my brain is at 1,000,000 miles an hour and I have to step back. So I do notice that when it comes to my stuff. For me, I have to bounce all my thoughts off other people. Very hard for me to make business decisions without talking them through with other people. I don't even need feedback. I don't need the person to say, this is a great idea, Damien. I just need to talk to them and have me ask questions in return about what I'm talking to them about. And then I know my own mind. It's a strange thing. It's just how I process. I don't know if that's got anything to do with neurodivergence or not, but it's definitely a very me thing.
Yeah, I've heard it common. The verbal processing aspect is common for ADHDers.
Okay, cool. There you go.
I'd love to hear a bit more about what you were saying in terms of the Pomodoro technique not working well, because often that's one of the off-the-shelf productivity tactics that is recommended for ADHDers. And you mentioned that yourself, that there's a tendency to want to move on to other tasks. But you were saying staying in hyperfocus is really important for you.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I rely on hyperfocus to get stuff done. And when I'm in hyperfocus, I do not want to stop. Not for anything, not for anyone. Yeah. And so being forced to stop is then problematic because I lose my flow. I guess I would explain it, the concept of flow, like what's a Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, right? When he talks about flow, is that beautiful space where you it's challenging enough, but not so challenging that you're overwhelmed and you get addicted to that space. I get into that space and I rely on it very heavily. Pomodoro just acts as a distraction. I think maybe if I was doing like admin style work, where you're just doing data entry, it's not cognitively demanding, right? Tricky work, but it's just repetitive. I think Pomodoro could be very useful for breaking it up and giving you, so you get in and get out. But yeah, it's never worked for me. None of the productivity thing that I've read on the whole works very well for me for whatever reason. I've suffered. And I think that's why I struggle with school too, because school, you just,
There's a timetable
switching.
And it's not yours.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't do well. With things I'm not interested in.
Yeah. And then you were saying, though, that creative work, you do need to take breaks. How do you know when to take a break when you're doing creative work?
I start to feel frustrated. Yeah. So there are times for me in creative work where, let's say I'm designing a website and I just can't, how do I want to make this look right? This doesn't look good. This is frustrating. And you spend an hour and you realize an hour has passed or half an hour has passed and nothing meaningful gets done. I can feel my frustration, anger, all those basic feelings coming up. That's when I know I've got to step away. Because when those feelings come up, it's not fun. I'm hyper-focused, but I don't enjoy it. And I need to be better. I'm not as good as I could be at stepping in when I start to get annoyed. But yeah, that's really how I notice it with creative tasks. When the hyper-focus is creating pain rather than enjoyment.
Yeah. Well, I can see Joe's getting frustrated here because he knows it's time for a break. So we're gonna take a break now.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
And we're back from our break. So, Damien, what does your morning routine look like and how's it evolved over time?
My morning routine is the same every single day. It's just like my work routine has to be the same. I eat the same thing every morning. I've learned that I need to have as little cognitive stress, like decision making and thinking, as possible before I begin my actual work. So it's the same thing every day until I hate it, and then I change it, and I leave it again the same until I hate it, and I change it again.
That sounds really sensible to be a bit like, I think, Mark Zuckerberg, even though he's not a great example. The idea of wearing the same shirt each day, avoiding decision fatigue makes a lot of sense. How about in the evening? How do you manage your evening routine and your sleep?
Sleep is always difficult for me. I don't know if it's ADHD or like the hormone regulation or both, or the two things are related, which is also possible. I read at night. So, I watch TV at night, but before bed. So if I go to bed at 9, I'm asleep at 11. So it takes me quite some time for my brain to slow down. Is a very, very slow process. My brain doesn't wind down easily. It's usually going very fast. And so that takes me, I have to read. I don't watch TV. I have a Kindle and I lay there in bed and read for an hour.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you read a particular type of book?
For sleeping, fiction always. I used to be in a fantasy fiction and now I enjoy science fiction a lot more. That's my jam for sure.
Damien, where can people connect with you and your work?
Yeah, look, if you'd like to hear me like talking about what I do, I'd say, head to my YouTube channels, YouTube/School of Attraction. But if you want to, all my podcasts, School of Attraction, you can check that out as well. But if you do want to check out my website, if you like, especially if you're in Australia, but I do some international stuff as well, check me out at schoolofattraction.com.
Wonderful. And do you have any final words or asks for the audience?
I would say this. Obviously, everyone's different with neurodivergences, even with the same name of what you got. Everyone's so different. I've learned that with my coaching. So radically different, even with the same name. But I would say this. I would say that for me, I don't know if this can be useful to everyone, but it was so big for me, was to find the way in which whatever I've got, whatever limitations and strengths that I've got, to use them to create a lifestyle that enables those things to be strengths as much as possible. Because if I didn't do that, if I lived a lifestyle or had a job like everyone else, I think I would struggle and always feel like I wasn't good enough. And I don't feel that way. I don't feel like I'm bad or different, or I'm different, but I don't think it's a negative thing. I think I'm utilizing it to the best of what I can do with it. And everyone that I've seen with great success on the spectrum has done something similar. So
yeah, wise words. Create an environment that's going to work for your brain. Thanks a lot for being a guest on the show. It's been wonderful having you on.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.